Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. So this one is going to be a little bit different just because I won't have anything in the background because I'm going to hop into the ideas that I have for my game development project and towards the later half of the video, and I want to actually I have some visuals. They're really poorly drawn, but I feel like it'll help, so I'm not going to have any Temtem like radar in the background or anything. I'm just going to talk this time. So I feel like I should this time anyways, because it's a little bit more important. Because the other ones were just talking about like, oh, the state of Temtem, and honestly, it's still kind of declining, and it's one of the primary reasons why I'm doing this all. But it's not like the only reason. So, I mean, just a quick overview. I started streaming about 9 months ago. It was over the summer. Just kind of was bored and had some extra time. I had one semester left of school, and I was just doing an internship. Well, I liked the internship and I got a job now and I've graduated. So time's passed. And through pretty much the entire summer and school year, I was averaging close to like 4 or 5 streams a week, which is like a ton of time investment, especially when each one is at least 2 hours. It's not that I didn't have the time. My whole idea with streaming was that I'm playing the game anyways. I'm just going to turn on the camera and stream. And if you guys want to watch, that's awesome. If you don't, that's fine. Because I didn't want to put any time into editing because it takes a lot of time and it's not a skill I have. And I appreciate all of you that have watched. That makes it sound like I'm going to quit. I'm not going to quit streaming, no. But I am going to start streaming a lot less. So I've already mentioned in my Dragon Quest Monster series that I am going to be discontinuing that. That game got quite frustrating where the balance was just all over the place and many games were determined by luck. It got very frustrating, and chances are, from what we've seen, there's not going to be any balance update. And so I will not find myself playing that game again, nor streaming it, and I didn't want to pressure myself to keep doing so, even though there were a lot of you that enjoyed it. So I apologize, but my last stream was going to be the last one for that. As far as Temtem goes, I still really love Temtem. I think 1.6 has been the best patch we've had in over a year. It's been great. However, Temtem as a whole is declining, just for the pure fact of we've lost a lot of players, and we're losing players at a much higher rate than we're gaining new players, and it's very sad to see. And as much as I love the game and enjoy it, I don't know how much longer it's going to last. I wouldn't be surprised if in about another year, maybe by just the end of 2024, that we end up in a situation where maybe we got like 10 people in at least the competitive community that log on about daily to to play a couple matches. I don't even think there's a lot of people getting on to do their dailies because a lot of people have all the currencies they need anymore. So that's what I'm a little afraid of. I hope I'm wrong. But because of that, I haven't actually found a game that's been able to scratch the same itch that competitive or Temtem has. It's just I haven't found another game that is that fun to me. And so I decided that I'm actually going to slow down my gaming as a whole, and I'm actually going to put effort into making my own game. Some of you have heard that I've kind of thrown that idea around, and at first it was just a funny thought, like, oh, haha, what if I made my own game? But I put a lot of thought into it, and I'm gonna go for it. I don't have any experience, but there's so many self-teaching resources out there that I think I can pull it off with enough time and motivation, which I'm hoping I have enough of. But as far as how that's going to affect my streaming, is that I'm really not going to stream a whole lot anymore. Nowhere near the 4 or 5 a week. It's probably going to be more like 1 or 2 streams a month, which is it's very drastic as a change. But it's just how I'm going to spend my free time now. I'm probably only going to spend 1 or 2 days a month where I actually play Temtem for more than like 1 hour or half an hour at a time. I know that there's another season of Club Wars, at least at the time I'm posting this, coming up. So I may try and cast that just for a little bit more content out there for you guys, but we'll see what my time allows for. So, but on the other hand, I am going to start the game development project in March. So as the time of uploading this, there's about 2 weeks until then. So how am I going to spend that 2 weeks? Well, I'm actually going to do a playthrough of the game that more or less has inspired me to to make a game. It's called Enchanted Arms. It's quite old by now. I think it came out in like 2008. It's some game that really didn't get a lot of attention, but it is another monster battler with some really well thought out strategy. Like it's a grid based monster battler, and it's super interesting. But it's only PVE because PvP died a long time ago, and it's got a whole bunch of other issues with it. Honestly, like you're forced to use the main story characters if you want to beat the game. There's you don't learn new moves as you level up, and the dialogue is so cringe. But I one have a lot of memories of the game, and two I was gonna play through it anyways just to kind of refresh my memory, and give me some more motivation to continue working on this game. And I figured if I'm gonna play it, I'm gonna stream it and show you guys. I actually have an original copy of the game as well as an Xbox 360, which is the console it's on. So I'm hoping they both still work and I can legally stream it for you guys. And so I'm going to try and pretty much do a lot of streams over the next 2 weeks. Hopefully I don't have to go into March. Hopefully I can finish it in those 2 weeks, but I might. We'll see how it goes. But that's going to be where pretty much all of my streaming time goes into until I just start working on the project. And once I do, I'm actually going to set up a Discord server. I'll touch on it a little bit more later, but if you look in the description of the video, you can see a link where you're more than welcome to join. I'll have a bot set up soonish, at least, that will send out a notification whenever I'm streaming. So if you guys don't have Twitch notifications on, or even if you do, you'll have a backup if you want to watch my streams whenever they're available. Because I'm not sure I'm going to have set stream times when I'm only streaming once or twice a month. Because it'll probably just be like, oh, I have this much time, and I don't feel like working on the project at this time, because I'm sure I'll have streaks of burnout and just days when I wanna play some Temtem, you know, and so that'll kind of be the plan going forward. As far as like my guide videos, my in-depth guides, my tier lists, my code, like meta code videos, I don't know what the future of those is gonna be. If I'm not keeping up with the meta, I'm not sure how comfortable I'll be providing in-depth guides, but or a tier list for that matter, or even codes. So we'll see how much Temtem I still play in my free time. I'd like to get some sort of guide content out there for you guys, but I can't make any promises. So I apologize, and I hope you guys understand. But that pretty much covers most everything I wanted to as far as streaming goes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into kind of just the stuff I've prepared for the game, because I know some of you are really curious, because I'm like a very high level competitive player in Temtem, so it's like, all right, what does the guy like me want in a game? So here is just kind of like an outline of what the battle system would look like. So first of all, it's probably worth mentioning that it's going to be on PC and mobile. At least that's the plan. So I'm not going to do any consoles because I know that they have stupid long update times. And also, it's going to be relatively simple, where I think it would be just fine for it to be a mobile game. Plus, I think when you have a mobile game, you reach a lot wider of an audience. And, you know, on PC, it'll still function the same as mobile, because instead of tapping, you just click. At least that's the goal. That's everything I'm going to say here is all like theoretical, what I'm planning to do, but nothing is set in stone because I haven't made anything yet. It's kind of, I'm doing a lot of planning, because the more planning you do, the more likely it is that you can have success if you run into roadblocks, but can't be too stiff. I don't know. But anyways, so yeah, it's hoping to be PC and mobile. I'm planning on it being free, with maybe some cosmetics you can pay for. Don't want to do loot boxes or anything like that. You know, when you've played games enough, then you realize what you don't want to see in a game. So I'm gonna try and get rid of all those things that everyone hates, with like microtransactions to get stronger and stuff. But, all right, let's get into what the game's actually going to be about. I hope you guys can see my mouse, but honestly, I'm not sure if you can. So this would make a lot more sense if you watch my Enchanted Arms series that I'm going to do in the near future. But Enchanted Arms is like a grid of 3 by 4 on each side. This, I'm increasing it to 4 by 6 because I think more space to work with is going to be really valuable. So each team has a grid of 4 by 6 tiles. It's divided by the red line in the middle. That line cannot be crossed. This is a little different than other grid-based games. So the way the reason why some tiles are green and blue is you see the little orange guy, my stick person. So let's just say he's one of your monsters or a character. So if you have him selected, you are able to move to any of the green tiles. So like I said, you can't move over to the red tile. As of right now, I'm planning for you to have 3 spaces of movement, but that may change in the future. And then the blue on the other side is it's going to be the attack. So I'm hoping to have like 10 different attacks or something, and each attack has a different like hit pattern. So rather than some games where you like cast a spell and then you just select where it hits, in this game your attack would be a set distance and set pattern from your player or your character. So in this case, you can see that if the guy's standing here, then it hits like two. It doesn't hit the first 2 tiles in front of it, then it hits the third, then it skips one, then it hits another, and then you got the 2 on the left and right as well. So if you wanted to move that over a space, you would have to physically move your character to the right or left or up or back in order to actually hit. So it adds almost like a third dimension to battles because your positioning really matters. It's almost like I don't really want to compare it to chess, but it kind of is in that way, where the position you have to actually get into a physical position in order to attack your opponent. I really like that. That's a big part of Enchanted Arms combat that I think is super interesting, and that's kind of the whole basis for this. So, along with that, you see the big boss I've got over there. So that's just a general enemy, but I am thinking of actually having bosses in the game. So most characters are going to be just one tile, just a single tile, and then you'll have 4 characters per side. So it'd be like a 4v4. However, something Enchanted Arms does is it actually has larger monsters. They'll take up 4 tiles, 2 by 2. Though those aren't always bosses. Sometimes they're just larger monsters. But I actually thought that I could bring that concept to this as well, and I think it would translate pretty well. Where instead of like legendaries like you have in Pokemon or mythicals in Temtem or anything, you would actually have a larger monster, and then it could be a boss in a story mode type thing. And maybe it doesn't have higher stats, but it has like a different ability or something. I'm not sure yet. I really like Temtem mythicals more than Pokemon legendaries as far as like viability wise, because Temtem mythicals are more just like another playable monster rather than something that's just going to entirely ruin a game because it's got much higher stats. But at the same time, having a larger hitbox like that can be a disadvantage. So because you actually have specific attack patterns that you have to hit something with. And it's not like only hitting it with 1 tile of damage does less. No, that's not how I'd do it. It's just if you get hit, you get hit. I am going for a little bit of like simplicity here because 1, I want it to be relatively easy to understand, and 2, I don't want to die from trying to code this stupid game. I wish I could move stuff around. All right, yeah, I got an idea. All right, so I got a couple other. So I was just doing some concept art, just because I'm going to outsource my art, because I have no skill in art, but I can at least put down my ideas as far as like what kind of stuff I want to give the artist an idea of what they can do, because the better I can convey what I want, the better result we can get when we're done. So I got a couple little pieces I've drawn here that I can show you guys. They're definitely not good. If you've seen my little end of stream arts, then you understand kind of that my art skills are bad. I'll make them bigger for a little bit. So I mean, I got like a hermit crab with like a cannon. He's like a fire type. And then we got a snake that's got like thorns all around it, like he's a thistle or something. But I'll just use these guys to kind of like display what I'm talking about a little bit, because I still don't think you guys can hear my mouse or see my mouse. So like, let's say I got my snake in that square right there. Like, oh, no. So okay, it's nothing. It doesn't like me clicking it. So the snake could move like here, but it can't move past here. Could move over here, but not like over here or here, whatever. And like if you have two monsters on the same square, you can't stack them. So if you got the hermit crab there, you wouldn't be able to move here. No, can't stack. And if you wanted like this blue square right here to move over and hit this boss, you would actually have to move here, so that the pattern would be like here, 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 and here. I mean, I hope you guys are kind of getting that. It's just all it's hard to show you without an actual animation or showing anything specifically. And that's, you guys probably notice like they're different types, because like this guy would be like nature, this guy would be fire. So what does my type chart look like? The type chart would be like this. I'm not sure yet, but it would be something like this. So the gray spot would be like a normal or neutral type. It's kind of basic, doesn't have any type interaction at all. And then rather than having one large type chart, I think it would be interesting to have two split type charts. So you have the normal fire, grass, water trio, but then I also have an electric, wind, and earth trio. So this allows me to have 7 types in the game, which I think is plenty. I think it's pretty interesting. I mean, it's not set in stone yet, but I think it would be. It allows me to have a lot of flexibility as far as like designs, having 7 different types to work with. One thing I am thinking is probably that I'm going to just have monotypes. I think dual types gets a little bit complicated. Not that I wouldn't allow monsters to have attacks from different types. I'm not even sure if I'm going to have a stab mechanic or not yet. That's to be determined, but I think I'm just going to do monotypes as far as like monster types, but I'll try and keep it interesting. Oh man, the background keeps wanting to move. And then I'm going to try and make some more interesting designs. Problem is, I really like, I'm not a huge fan of like typical monsters. I feel like a lot of, everyone's seen like, oh, a Loch Ness monster, huh, didn't expect that. I mean, not that a snake is real interesting, or I don't know. I just like, I like animal-based monsters more than just monstrosities. So I think I'm going to end up doing that. But the problem is I am going to run into issues with like making them look a little unique, because like besides this being an excessively long hermit crab and with like a goofy looking shell, it still is just, it's very clearly a hermit crab, and it doesn't really fit super much of that much of a theme. So I mean, there's so many things for me to decide yet. So, I mean, I'm trying to knock them out one by one. Like, I think I want to do pixel art. I think pixel art's, honestly, it's just going to be cost effective. I'm looking into the cost of pixel art. I'm hoping to have like 56 monster designs, and I think that in order to get that many with animated sprites, or just like, so it's like idle movements and even just simple attack movements, it's probably going to be upwards of like $3,000 to $4,000 to commission all that, which is in kind of, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot for just like a hobby or passion project. But I and that's just pixel art. Like, if I went and did like a higher level of art, that would just be far too much. So that's why I think I'm just going to go with some simple pixel art. I think pixel art looks relatively good anyways. Let's see. I took some notes on what I'm actually like. I still want to have some surprises by the time the game releases. So I took notes of some things that I'm willing to share and other things I'm not. So let me. And I took a list. So I didn't prepare too much for this. Give me a break. Just, there's so many things with this game, and it's like the order in which I talk about them. I just wasn't entirely sure. So One of the things that I'm going to implement is an energy system of some sort. I'm not sure exactly how it would work. I'm thinking that each monster actually has a set bar of like 200 energy or stamina or something, some equivalent. So you'd have a set bar of 200, and each monster starts the battle with 100. Now, obviously, each attack takes a certain amount. Like maybe this pattern specifically takes like 24 energy, and maybe you regen like 15 or 20 every round naturally. But then my idea is once you reach the max of 200, I think that you should be able to have like a super move, like kind of like a Z move in Pokemon. So it would actually be kind of difficult to build up that much like energy unless you're using really weak moves. But then when you do, you can unleash something that can be super impactful, but not like game changing. It would be hard to balance kind of, but I think it would be an interesting mechanic. So that's something I'm thinking of doing. And having energy in general allows an extra element, like another way to balance moves, because it's just like, oh, this move is being used on like every single fire type in the game. Well, I guess I'll just increase the energy cost so they can't keep spamming it, sort of thing. So I really like that. Okay, and then one of the other main gimmicks of the game that I didn't mention, I wasn't sure at first if I wanted to say it, but I think it'll help to keep interest in the concept here, is I'm going to have terrain effects. So we have the grid here, but having ways to interact with the grid, at least on your opponent's side, I think could make the entire game like super interesting. So I have one terrain effect for each type besides neutral. Neutral wouldn't have one. I'm debating on if I want neutral to maybe have something that wipes terrain effects. That is something I'll have to determine later. But essentially, I guess I should say instead of having status effects like most other monster battlers, like I'm not going to have poison, I'm not going to have burn, I'm not going to have paralysis. I'm going to have terrain effects kind of as a replacement for those. So let's see. I have one for each type. So for water, I think I'm going to have like it'll be damp. But it's also funny because it stands for damage amp. So maybe you can inflict some tiles with just water, and then all of a sudden, opponents standing in those tiles will take bonus damage. Probably would have to be small, like maybe 10 or 15%, because it would be really easy to combo with, and I'd probably have to restrict the amount of moves that can inflict that, but I think it would be good to have. For fire, I think pretty standard damage over time would be good. Just set a tile on fire. If your opponent stands in it, then they take damage. For nature, I think having an energy drain would be good. Like we have the energy system, and having a way to prevent your opponent from reaching whatever those super moves are, or even preventing them from spamming their higher cost general moves, I think could be good. So that's something I want to do. Earth, I think I'll have like reduced movement. So instead of being able to move 3 tiles, maybe you can only move 2 tiles if you're standing, or if you begin your turn in like an earth tile, whether it's like rocky terrain or muddy or something. So that would be kind of like a control option. For wind, I think this one's really interesting. But I think I know that there was another game in the past when I was looking up games similar to Enchanted Arms. This was one that came up, and I haven't played it because it didn't really give off Enchanted Arms vibes to me. But it's the entire point of that game was to push units and together for combos. But I think that would be really cool for a wind elemental like terrain to just push units. It's like maybe you can have a tornado in like maybe 4 squares or something, where if your unit's here, they get pushed over here. If it's here, they get pushed over here or something, so you can adjust units. Maybe you have like a gust of wind that pushes all the melee units back a square or two. And something like that could be interesting. I just think it's an option, and I think it's just it kind of be something where you can build 4 big combos with terrain effects, and still like, you wouldn't be dedicated to a strategy with them, but the option of full combo would be there. I think it just adds some more depth and interesting mechanics to the game. And last, I didn't forget, but the electric, I'm not real sure on this one yet. I think I've covered a lot of the main terrain effects. I know some people are probably like, oh, just have it block off a tile. And I did think about that, but problem is kind of like if you have something like blocks off a tile that a unit is standing on, they'd have to get shoved to another location, which doesn't really work. I could have a stun mechanic, but I kind of don't want to. I mean, most of us have experienced from Temtem that full control of like sleep and freeze can be really annoying to deal with. I think the most control I'm going to have is like the energy sap as well as the movements movement reduction sort of thing. But electric, my idea is maybe like delayed damage. Like maybe it like calls down a lightning strike, but it's maybe the next turn. So you could have something where, and maybe it would stack. So maybe you can have like a whole bunch of widespread electric moves and just make the entire field deal delayed damage, and then they stack, and then your opponent can't move anywhere because they'll just take tons. I don't know. I think there's so many options. It's just which one do I go with? Ah, okay. I still have just a couple more things to cover, but that's the majority of the actual gameplay. So just as far as other things, I think rather than being a team full of monsters, I think it would be kind of interesting if your main character is actually in the battle as well. So since it would be 4v4, you would have like your one player character as well as three monsters. Now, to make it interesting, I'd probably have like different weapons the main character can equip, like maybe a sword, a bow, a shield, or something else, just so that even though you are stuck using the main character, it's still a very flexible unit, one that you'd actually want to have on your team anyways. So that's an idea I'm thinking about. Also, if I have like cosmetics in the game, like everyone loves being able to show off, like as cool as like like Temtem fashion like outfits are, you only see them at kind of like in the background of battles, and they're not center of attention. But if you had some fancy clothes and you could actually move your character around and still beat on somebody while you're wearing, I don't even know, then you could, it's just something I think would be fun. And having a monster battler where your player actually fights alongside your monsters, I think is a little bit unique. Not entirely, maybe, but it'd be something. Um, and then I touched on I'm gonna have a story, but it's not gonna be the center of the game. It's meant to more be a PvP type of game. I was debating on if I wanted to have it more or less be like Clash Royale, where it's just like, oh, you just click the battle button and you fight, and then you get units. But it's just like you lose out on the entire feel of even like taming monsters. You don't have any connection. And how do you even create a system to get them without loot boxes? I couldn't justify it. So I figured I'd have a very simple story with like just one map. Maybe we'll have like 7 locations, one for each element, with a boss at the end. And instead of actually having a capture mechanic, I think I would just have something where you unlock a new monster at the end of every battle, so that every time you complete a battle, you feel like you have a reward that was worth playing. The only issue I see with that is that you end up with a forced story progression. Actually, I should, yeah, because there will be some people that just want to play the PvP, and maybe I could add like a sandbox mode at some point where you can just have everything from the start. But I think just having a simple way to unlock monsters at the start would be good. And I think that's what I'm going to go with. It would also be really easy in the future to add more monsters and locations on top of it, as long as I already have the system set up for it. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of other little things with the game, but I think that gives a good overview, and I hope it keeps you guys, or it got you guys' attention, that it's interesting. If there's anything that I said that you guys are just like, I don't know about that, let me know for sure. I know before I was throwing around the idea of crits, like critical hits, and that was pretty much thrashed on by everybody. and I thought about it, and I definitely agree. So as of right now, I'm not planning on having any RNG in the game. One thing the only RNG would be like who starts the battle, because my idea would be that each player moves all four of their units during their turn before it swaps to the other player, who then moves all four of their units. But that would mean going first has a large advantage. So, but I really like that style of play. So I think there's two solutions to that. One of them would be where you let somebody start the battle, but they're only able to use two of their units on the first turn before it passes the turnover, and then it's just four back and forth. So if you start, you don't get to have as good of a start, but then that kind of screws up with the energy system. So I'm not fully sure what I want to do with that yet. The other option would be to have a secondary mode where you, instead of moving all four of your units at once, you only move one at a time before it switches to the other player. And then once all four units have been moved, then it moves to like a second phase where it swaps. I don't know. There's options. You know, it's kind of interesting to think about making your own game because everything's in your hands. And so every problem that I'm having is just like, well, I could do this, I could do that, I could do that. It's not like I'm, it's so different to think about, but it's really fun. So I'm glad I'm doing this, and I hope it goes well. And I hope you guys are interested enough to see it through with me. Now, just a couple things I do want to cover is, first of all, I'm sure there'll be some of you that would be like, oh, if you need some help with this, that, or the other, just let me know. And I greatly appreciate that, but I am planning on having this just kind of be a solo project, except if I can get one of my best friend IRL. Like, I asked him if he wants to join. He hasn't responded to me yet. I told him to think on it because it's kind of like a big commitment if he would. He's kind of the only one I'm asking for, and then whoever I hire for pixel art will kind of be the only ones I'm working with. So I appreciate anyone who would be interested, but I'm going to have to decline any assistance in that way. However, I'm debating on setting up a Patreon at some point. I don't have that up right now. Like, it's not worth doing a Kickstarter for something like this because I don't want to feel pressured or have to deliver. But if I know there's some people who have even offered Patreons for my streaming before, or just donations through Patreon, but I didn't have it set up. But I feel like if I have something through the game, maybe I could actually offer you guys more exclusive updates. Like maybe as I get more of the pixel art designs done, I could show them in a special chat for people. But I don't know if I want to do that just yet. But the idea is definitely there. But until then, if you want to support me, just join the Discord. I just, once again, check the link in the description. It's kind of going to be the hub of the game. It'll probably kind of be a combination of like my streaming plus the game hub for now, and then eventually once the game really gets rolling and I start doing like beta tests and stuff, then it'll probably just turn purely into a server for the game. So if you want to follow the game and any updates with it, just join me there. And if I would do a Patreon at some point, it would be linked through the Discord. So then you would still want to keep up to date with that. And then any like larger updates I have, I'll share in the Discord anyways. It's just I'm throwing ideas out there because nothing's set in stone yet. But that's all I have for this video. So thank you all so much. I hope I've at least piqued your interest. And if I haven't, then that's a-okay. I know that a game like this definitely isn't for everyone. You can appreciate my terrible, wonderful art on the way out. So thank you all so much. I hope to see you around. So see you in the next one. Bye-bye.